We're going to discuss the big news of Kirin's U.S. production shift because their contract is done with Anheuser-Busch, and they're moving it to New Belgium Brewing, which they bought, I don't remember how many years ago.
2019,
and they're moving all the production over there. And what, kind of what does that mean for the entire space in itself? And then we're going to discuss how declining beer sales have led to a surplus of hops, and imparting some prices and are impacting prices and the availability of those hops to brewers, and maybe some ways to use all those excess hops.
Just our 2 cents.
Just our 2 cents.
So our first article today, we're discussing Kirin is moving their U.S. production from Anheuser-Busch to New Belgium starting in January of 2025.
Yeah.
So New Belgium is taking over this U.S. production of Kirin Ichiban and Kirin Light from Anheuser-Busch in 2025. It highlights definitely a strategic shift in beer production landscape, right?
Yep.
You're cutting out the middleman, which emphasizes the importance of local production for international brands. Mm-hmm. This isn't the first of this type of story, and what's interesting is we kind of want to break down a bit of the timeline. Anheuser-Busch has had the contract to produce Kirin in the U.S. since 1996. Yeah. And apparently the contract ends in 2024. It's an interesting set of numbers. I think it's, I don't know, right around like that 30-year mark is probably like a 30-year contract or something close, that they had. But Kirin, i.e. Lion, which is an Australian company, a subsidiary of Kirin, purchased New Belgium in 2019. Yep. And now the contract with Anheuser-Busch is ending, so they're going to take all the production of Kirin and put it into the New Belgium facilities in Fort Collins, Colorado here, Asheville, North Carolina, and then New Belgium also just purchased a production facility in like Davenport, Virginia or something like that. So you're going to be able to get Kirin locally, fresh, because of some strategic advantages.
Which means it doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't because it came from Anheuser, but it might be even fresher, potentially, right? Because we don't know exactly which facility it was brewed at.
Yeah, I didn't get that far into it. For us, it's super fresh, right? Because Fort Collins is right up the road. It's less than an hour away. But what's interesting is really that cutting out the middleman, right? Mm-hmm. It's a shift in production as a result of Kirin's acquisition of New Belgium in 2019. Yeah. So for us, these local benefits, which to your point isn't a newer thing, right? Because Anheuser-Busch has been producing it in the States since 1996. One, good for Kirin, right? Like they figured out a long time ago how to figure out the cost of like supply chain, right? They thought, well, it takes weeks and months to get our product over into the States where it is a highly sought after product, and went, we can have it produced in the States by Anheuser-Busch and people can get it there. We're cutting out these costs of the supply chain. And now they took it a step further and said, hey, we already own these facilities, New Belgium and Bell's up in Michigan. Not sure if they're going to produce there. They might. They very well might. Yeah. Cutting out the middleman totally. So now they get to reap the benefits of their profits even more.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense for them why they came in and bought them in the first place. They're one of the bigger like microbreweries in the country. Yeah. It also shows that they have a focus on renewable energy, which is awesome because there's so much in the New Belgium facility that was groundbreaking.
Yeah, it was the first wind-powered brewery in the U.S.
Yeah, and so
I didn't know that. That's super cool.
Really cool. I think it's an interesting shift, and what it also made me think of was we saw Budweiser start buying up these like bigger bigger craft breweries over the last probably 5-ish years. My timeline with COVID gets a little bit janky in there.
I would say 10
Probably
years.
10, yeah. But they started buying them up, and it makes me wonder how much of that was to also offset this Kirin contract. Like, how big was that in their entire production? So they needed to be able to offset it with other stuff. I don't know. Maybe not.
I definitely hadn't thought about it in that way. I guess definitely more on like cheer team Kirin Ichiban, right? Like, oh wow, good for them. Like cutting out the middleman.
Yeah.
And it's totally this market positioning shift, right? So you're transitioning from this high level, high tiered brewing
monstrosity.
Yeah, thank you. I was like, what's the big adjective here that we can? Their adverb. So it's transitioning from AB and Bev to New Belgium. It's like this underscore of evolving dynamics and competitive strategies within the beer market. And I did want to also say, like, Kirin isn't the first to do this, nor the last by any means, but Sapporo is now produced stateside by Stone Brewing in California. Probably, again, not the only facility, but Sapporo came in and purchased Stone Brewing just a few years ago for $100 and some million after Stone wasn't doing as well, right? Standing alone on its own. It had some failed ventures over in Berlin.
Which we went to.
We did. Somehow we hit this like 3-year timeline that it was open. And
also makes sense why we walked by and we're like, whoa, Stone Brewing, like the Stone Brewing?
Yeah.
We're like, nah, that can't be it. We walked in and we're like, oh shit, it is. Why are they here? It was very strange.
Anyway.
And then we hit the 3 years it was there, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it was like 3 years.
It was a sweet facility too.
Yeah, and then Brewdog took it over.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And then I think it's Japanese Brewing or Japan Brewing, which is Sapporo. Then they purchased Stone, and then they produced Sapporo in California, and it was like a huge deal. They didn't tell people at first. They just started like, hey, this is our new beer that we're producing, right? Trying to figure out the quirks, the kinks of the recipe, whatever it was.
Oh, that's a cool story.
And then word got out that it was Sapporo, and people just lost their shit.
Oh man, imagine trying it and being like,
Rightfully
oh, this
so.
is pretty solid. I really want some sushi right now. This is awesome.
Do you suppose it has that effect? Instantly, I want sushi.
I want some sushi right now.
I don't know.
That's what I always get a Kirin or a Sapporo when I'm doing sushi.
100%. And actually, I prefer a Kirin over a Sapporo. Not that I don't like Sapporo.
I usually choose Kirin as well, but
lighter. Anyway, so a couple takeaways. It's a transition of production. You're cutting out the middleman, right? That's that marketing position shift that's happening. And honestly, I was super excited about Kirin's movement here, right?
Yeah.
Like, pretty strategic if you ask me, right? And good for New Belgium, right? They get to expand their brand as well, and the recipes that they could get to produce. So pretty exciting news. That's a big one.
yeah. It's also, I always find it interesting when you have the Lions Brewing Company, and then you have Kirin, and then you have New Belgium, and so it's like, ooh, like,
so many
so when you hear all the subsidiaries, is always kind of a funny rabbit hole of who owns what to like finally get to the truth of.
Oh,
when something comes out that you're like, yeah, New Belgium, they're local, then you're like, oh, they're not.
At the end of the day, the end of reading this article, as excited as I still was like, the world is still owned by the 1%.
Yeah.
Depending on what 1% of what category that you want to choose, a subsidiary of this, whatever, right?
Always cycles through.
Good for them.
Dots Pretzels.
Life is about perspective. Exactly. And how many Dots Pretzels have now exploded because Dots sold out?
Sold to Hershey's, if you didn't know.
Yeah. Okay.
And that might have been a while ago.
This is not a pretzel podcast. Perhaps it might be because it's food.
We have had pretzels multiple times.
Exactly, right? Like, it's just...
Yeah, now there's all these other brands doing the pretzels.
I'm sure there's a fancy word for it, but I am not an economics major nor a business major, and I just kind of take life as it is and try to make the best of it.
My guess is they had like some sort of like patent-esque thing.
Yeah,
Then
exactly.
when Hershey's
I think
bought
it's the twist, right? Because they all look the same.
Yeah, Hershey's was like, oh no, we'll sell that out to a bunch of people.
Of course you would.
Yeah, and so they're
of course you
not
would.
making money outside of just the packaged goods. Anyways, it's not from North Dakota anymore. No. But we have tried some of the other ones, and Dots is still the best. We do have some pickle ones that are pretty good.
I just had some rolled gold dill pickle ones.
Those are pretty good.
Really good with beer.
Yeah.
Shocker.
I did the Kruger one. They were garbage. Don't do the Kruger one.
Kroger?
Yeah, the Kruger one.
Well,
They were just pure salt. They weren't good at all. I didn't like them. And I like salt. No, it's too much.
If you like salt.
It was still too much. It was just like the only flavor was salt.
Oh.
It's not like the Dots are unsalted. Like, they're still salty.
There's
but the
a
other
fuck
ones,
ton of salt on them.
exactly. But the
I
other
think
ones
they're
are
great
just pure
bar
salt.
food.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Enzo loves them.
Yeah, there you go.
And I get to eat them because she likes them, so that's been nice.
When they were gone, I ate the whole bag. I felt really bad about that.
And all of our crackers. And most of our mac and cheese.
That was not true. I had one box of mac and cheese, and I replaced
There was
it.
only 2. I'm just kidding. There's more. I only had one box. There
can't
was
help
only
it.
one left.
That is not true.
It's not true, but it's funny. For our story number 2 for our brew news is the decline in beer sales has led to an excess supply of hops. Something that we kind of sillily overlooked when we thought about the declining in sales. Like, that was probably very obvious in hindsight that there was going to be this huge excess of hops going on.
Didn't really think about it before.
I just didn't really think about it. And, so basically what's coming out is that it was predicted in 2023 that some of our hops that are more widely used and widely available and have all these farmlands dedicated to growing these hops needed to get reduced by 20%. And they actually think that that was a low estimate, that they needed to get reduced by even more. Because now all these farmers are sitting on all these extra hops of these widely used
I heard they recently decided to add more hops to it.
hops for a lot of like IPAs, somewhere in the realm of like 54 million pounds of excess hops just sitting around that now they're having to unload for really cheap.
Yeah.
But some of like the more specialty hops are having to go for a higher price. Nobody's wanting to buy them because they can get these more common ones for really cheap because they're trying to get rid of the surplus of inventory.
Right.
So now it's created this imbalance of not only supply and demand, but an imbalance on the pricing models for farmers to be able to survive on what they're producing.
Right.
Because they're not able to sell for what it's actually worth, what the quality's worth, what they invested into it. And so it's making it even harder. And I think for beer drinkers, you're going to end up seeing a lot of like, I feel like if you thought you saw a lot of the same like hazy IPAs before, you're going to see a lot of the same IPAs.
I feel like we already are. I mean, like some of my favorite local breweries, I'm like, oh, another hazy. And I get it. Like hazies are good, but I feel like for me, it's dead on the vine. Like,
yeah,
it's got to be a really freaking good hazy for me to get excited about it. And I think it's too far and few between. And to your point, if it's just the same old classic ingredients, how are you going to wow me?
Yeah.
So it's this interesting paradox within the beer world that's happening.
And then also within the pricing that beer prices have gone up, right? But it's like, it's kind of odd that it's gone up at the same time while some of the hop prices have had to drastically reduce to get rid of this surplus.
Yeah.
But we know grains, we know there's hop yields, there's like grains and malt yields, like all of those have effect into what's happening. Mm-hmm. It's not just the hops alone. There's employee pricing, there's insurance, there's electrical, there's a bajillion reasons why beer prices have gone up, not just because of hops, but it definitely makes for an interesting kind of imbalance and conundrum of what's going on, of what people knew. And the article brings up this fun point of, I mean, it's not fun, but like it used to be like 40 breweries. So when these hop farmers would get their forecast, it was like 40 breweries and they were able to kind of forecast more accurately. Now you have 10,000 breweries, and the craft beer space did actually start taking a big chunk of the market from those 40 breweries. But let's also be honest.
So you're talking about an outdated, basically, project plan, right? Like they're using a project plan for hop farming in general that's probably 30 years old.
It's outdated, but it's also we've all heard the saying of like a lot of craft breweries. Well, craft breweries are run more as a hobby than a business. You're putting a lot of. You probably had really good financials from 40 powerhouses where there's people that are professionals at forecasting, and now you have a bunch of amateurs pretending like they know how to do a forecast,
doing their best,
right? But in a booming industry that then also came to a screeching halt. Yeah. So like I don't want to say it's all like completely in their own control, but it added a ton of variables into what was happening.
Let alone people are drinking less, right? Let alone there was a pandemic. People drank a lot more, but it still put a lot of hops on the side. There are a lot of interesting variables. You brought up some really good points there that I hadn't thought about before.
So anyways, we're like, hey, there's all these excess hops, and you can get them for cheap. I wonder, what other products one could make with hops.
Yeah. Let's put our little entrepreneurial hats on, right? Because if you've watched before, you've chatted with us before, it's first and foremost on our mind.
Yeah.
How can we get in on the entrepreneurial spirit? So, there's an excess supply of hops.
Yep. For cheap.
Same beers being used over and over again. We're just getting into the nitty-gritty of brewing, right? We haven't gotten very far. What else can we do with this supply of hops?
Yeah, we need more on our plate. Ideally, our food plate. So let's make some hop-infused oils.
Love it. Love it. Love it.
I think that's really fun.
I love it because for those who don't want to put any sort of alcohol into their system, right, really this is the difference between being a vegan or a vegetarian, right? Like, there is that line drawn in the sand. And if you want to be totally NA, but maybe you're used to cooking with beers, with different hop varieties, but you don't want to put even the slightest amount or even having to go buy beer into your food and cooking, whatever you're doing with, you can have these oils and you can still honestly get a more pronounced flavor of these hop varieties that you're looking for. That is what I love. Feel free to do it. We're probably going to get on board with it.
I have some fun body by beer hop infused oils coming up soon. My other favorite was bitters.
Yeah.
Bitters was really cool.
Not necessarily for the NA people out there.
Not great for the NA, but what a cool way to like spice up potentially your old fashioned. Instead of just orange bitters, let's put some citrus hop bitter in it instead.
I love that so much.
Let's make like beer inspired cocktails because it's made with hops. Oh, look at that.
Hop inspired cocktails. It's just we're gonna spell, don't you take this, hops. It's gonna be like HAWP.
Oh yeah.
Hops. Or it's just gonna be
We're gonna
HOP.
get McLovin to be our spokesman.
Nah. Anyway. There's a lot of other ideas out there. You could do soaps, vinegars,
holistic things, teas, stuff like that.
Think of what you would use herbaceous things for.
Ooh,
right?
herbaceous.
Like, you're talking about herbal essence here.
Yeah. So, anyways, interesting think piece. Interesting. What can you do with it? And bummer for the farmers. I mean, it from the article, the farmers were kind of trying to blame the breweries for not knowing their forecast well enough, but at the same time, like, you got to own your shit. You signed the contract. I can't put that all on breweries. Everyone was riding the wave.
Yeah, everybody was riding the wave, right?
Don't point
and
fingers
if you're going
after.
off of a 30-year model, that's not just on one person or the other. It takes two to tango, and you both read those forecast models. So can't predict a pandemic.
Truth.
Unless you got that kind of money, then I want to talk to you.
Someone might have.
Somebody totally like won the 1,000,000,000 to 1 chance.
So that's it for this week's edition of the Brew News. I hope you found these updates as fascinating and fun and thought-provoking as we did.
Totally. And as always, stay tuned in the next couple of weeks for more insights and stories from the craft beer and beer world. And don't forget to subscribe, like, share. Let us know what topics you want to talk about. We'd like to cover that next.
And as we brought up last week, there is new merch on the shop. So please feel free to go jump onto our website, bodybybeerpodcast.com. Click that merch button and check out some of our shirts. Check out some of our swags. Wear it around. It's a sweet logo. You know you want it.
It's a voluptuous logo.
You love it. Come on now. Get in on some of that.